Alan Walter was a long-term Scientologist who got involved in the late 1950s and early 1960s in Australia. He eventually became one of the largest mission holders in Scientology, owning many missions across the United States. He left in the early 1980s after disagreements with Scientology and what was going on. And then he decided to go ahead and research his own upper level bridge. Roger Boswarva is with us today to tell stories about Alan Walter and talk about what their research involved after leaving Scientology. Their viewpoints are not necessarily the viewpoints of Janis or myself, but we let people tell their stories on this channel, and the viewers can view them and decide for themselves what they want to believe. If you have any comments or anything like that, go down to the comments section and we will review them later. At any rate, we hope you find this video informative. Have a great day, and here's Roger. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our channel, Scientology Peeling the Onion. My name is Mark Fisher, and I'm here with my co-host, Janis Gillham Grady. How you doing, Janis?
Good, Mark. Good day, everybody. And it's a good day today. I actually got a phone call. You know how we've been talking about connection?
Mm-hmm.
And you did up that design of the T-shirts and the cups with connection and the hearts with the arrows going to it. I got a phone call today and talked to someone, and they were really appreciative of what we're doing and the thought of connection, and they've got family that they need to connect with, and this is a way to do it. You know, you can send the mugs to people, you can send T-shirts to people, and it really gets the message across to connect. And I even said to them, I said, don't wait for that person to reach you if you haven't heard from them for 10 years. You're probably still not going to hear from them. You be the bigger bean and make that phone call to break the ice. And
Right.
it's like, oh, okay. You know, you can't, and you can't invalidate what that person's doing or their beliefs. You've got to just break the ice and just talk to them and be yourself, and don't criticize how they're thinking or what they're doing. Let them be who they are, but at least you're breaking the ice and making that connection again. So I really enjoyed that conversation with the person, and I hope there's something that comes out of it.
Yeah, and just to reiterate what we talked about on our last video, I just did a design in our merch store about connection, right? And so I designed this coffee mug with the word connection in all caps and then two arrows pointing in to a heart. And that logo is on both sides of this coffee mug. And you can actually order it down below at our merchandise store. And Janis and I were talking, and we thought, hey, this is a great gift that you could send to your family member or parent or whoever who are still in Scientology or still in the Sea Org, and that maybe they've disconnected or not communicated with you, but you could send this to them as a gift, because Janis, you talked about, you know, sending Christmas cards and birthday cards to people, right?
Yeah, right. And you know what? They don't even have to be an active Scientologist or in the Sea Org. They could be under the radar, or they could have been an ex-Scientologist or ex-Sea Org member no longer associated with it. And they're in the middle of still feeling and peeling their own onion. So exactly. It's anybody you can reconnect with just through showing them that you care.
Yeah, and not only just for people that are in Scientology, if you've got coworkers or friends or somebody that you want to, you know, connect with, it doesn't have to be Scientology related. This might be a great gift idea for something that you could send them. It's not expensive, but anyway, it's down below. Yeah. There's a tab to it. You can order it and it gets shipped out. We actually got an order from somebody from Australia, you know. So anyway, we're going to be promoting this product, hopefully, you know, all the way through Christmas, because it'll make a great Christmas gift for people as well. Yeah. One other thing I wanted to mention before we tell everybody about our show today is I just got a notification here that our channel, Scientology Peeling the Onion, we just went over 725,000 views since we started a little over a year ago, which it's not as big as other channels, but it's pretty doggone good. What do you think, Janis?
I think that's great. We just got to keep plugging away, and hopefully our viewers and subscribers will rock slam that like button, and also tell their friends and family about how wonderful our channel is, and promote to get us more subscribers and people listening to us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way. We tell the history of Scientology. We tell people stories. We don't judge what they say, and that kind of goes along with our guest today, who's been on here twice before. And we did a great show with him on the Scientology ban in Australia, and then we also did a show on the early days of Dianetics and Scientology in Australia. But anyway, Janis, why don't you go ahead and talk about what we're going to talk about today and introduce our guest.
Yeah, well, today we're going to talk about another old timer from Australia, Alan Walters, who actually became a multi-mission holder here in the U.S. He has since passed away, but I knew Alan as a kid growing up in Australia, and then I knew him at St. Hill, and again when he would come to the ship. And anyway, so we're going to talk to Roger Boswarva, and stop laughing, Roger. Anyway, pardon my fumbling the Boswarva, and let's bring Roger on.
Okay, here he is.
Misbehave when you try and pronounce my name like an American. I'm surprised.
I know I had it right the first time, and now I keep fumbling it.
Yeah, the English and Australians know how to say a Bos, Boscanny, Boscastle, Boswell. It's the Americans try and screw it up and pronounce it as a S. But then the Americans also try and say Z instead of Z. So what can I bloody say?
All right, so Roger, let everybody know how to pronounce it. Roger, let everybody know how to properly pronounce it then.
Boswarva.
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 Yeah.
Okay. Boswarva.
As in Boswell. You would actually offend Shakespeare if you mispronounce Boswell.
I'm not a Shakespeare fan, so
yeah, I'm pulling your leg. Well,
we're gonna talk about Alan. We're going to talk about Alan Walters, but before we do that, Roger, you had a couple of things you wanted to clarify and add some information on the previous two videos that we did with you.
There's some incompletes on the earlier ones and slight errors. The big incomplete, by the way, is what happened prior to the Melbourne inquiry. And this is rather critical information.
Okay.
As you know, I was falsely accused of trying to seduce my best mate's, Max Anderson's wife, by her. But what actually set that up was Phil Werner, as we know, was a nasty son of a bitch, quite venomous. And Max was also a bit of a local celebrity in the church. Max also was in a management position in one of Melbourne's petrochemical companies. It may have been it's an Australian company called Ampol, or it may have even been BP. I don't know. I don't remember. But basically, he was feeling rather exposed to ridicule in his corporate hierarchy job. And Phil Wern made it known to him that if he defended Scientology, Phil would particularly be targeting him for ridicule and the Melbourne inquiry. And I was asked by Jenny and Max, what are you going to do, Roger? Are you going to defend the church, or are you going to sort of bow out? And I said, I'm going to bloody speak the truth. I'm not going to, I can't betray my truth. And I saw Jenny didn't agree with that. And she was actually into attempting to protect Max from embarrassment and exposure as an idiot Scientology in the Melbourne community. as an executive in the corporation where he was earning his living. And so I said, no bloody way. I said, I'm just going to call it as the truth is. So that preceded the false accusation against me. Was the effort to, by one, to bring about a reason why I had to be subpoenaed to attend in case, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the sad thing about it, following that, when I next saw Max, two things that happened to him. One, his wonderful big, we used to call them Alsatians in Australia, but they're actually
German Shepherds.
German Shepherds, yeah. Beautiful dog got hit by a dog, hit by a car, killed. And Max himself, he was about the same age as me at the time, broke his leg playing rugby. It's like, if you talk, that is after he would not defend Scientology. And so we're looking at here sort of karma. The fact of life is he actually betrayed his truth and his survival by turning against what he truly believed.
Right.
It's a big lesson that we learn on that. You know, not defending Scientology, just pointing out that he betrayed his own integrity, and the end result was losing a wonderful pet and breaking a bloody leg.
Right, right.
So that was the setup to the Melbourne inquiry thing and what was going on from Philip Will. And he was going around effectively blackmailing people to get them to back off. So that was that. I actually saw documents putting on stuff from Hubbard during the setup of the inquiry. That Hubbard said, don't get involved in the inquiry because he knew that would be a setup against this, but he couldn't get away from it. So then the next strategy became get as many Scientologists as possible, stamping on the streets and shouting about this as a setup and so on and so forth.
Right.
But
right.
Pete Williams actually put a notice and hung it on the wall on the outside of the Hazy, which, by the way, Janis will remember this was directly opposite the House of Parliament in Victoria.
Yeah, right across the road.
And next to the big theater. We're talking about live theater here, not cinema. Next door to the Hazy down there was, I forgot what it was named. So we had terrific foot traffic there.
Right.
So Williams hung up this poster outside the Hazy. Scientology welcomes the inquiry. I said, fuck, Hubbard didn't say that. He said, don't get involved.
Well, interestingly enough, when Steve Kaneem was writing the Fair Game book and going through all the Melbourne library information, he actually found a copy of a letter from Mary Sue to my mother, where Mary Sue is saying that Ron finally decided to encourage the inquiry because then they can find out what we're working on and our goodness type of thing.
Yeah. Eventually it got to that because we couldn't avoid it. So they did that flipperoo there, and it still didn't help them. So that was Melbourne earlier.
Alan Walters.
Alan Walters, yeah. He's a big guy, about 6 foot two. And a professional athlete. But the funny part about it is also a marketing man and a salesman. And he could tend to twist the truth a little bit. Just a little, not a lot. And we could never find out. He was singing the song that he was played in the first game after the Melbourne Olympics. the first game. I see. They used the Melbourne cricket ground as the main stadium for the Melbourne Olympics running and track and field.
That was 1962.
No, 56.
Oh,
56
56.
Olympics.
Okay.
Yeah, because I won my gold medal in 52. Did not make it to the Olympics. And what happened, the Australian swimmers won everything in sight. We blew the world away.
Oh, yeah. Because my swimming coach was one of those swimmers.
Who was that? What was his name?
Crawford.
He must have been, I don't know what stroke he was. We won all the freestyle events. One of my training buddies, John Henricks, was trained by one of my coaches, Harry Gallagher. So he won all the sprint events. Murray Rose won all the distance events. But in those days, they only had 4 freestyle events, 100 meters, 200 meters, 400 meters, and 1,500 meters. Today, there's about 8 bloody freestyle events.
Yeah.
And you get lost. We won all the female events as well. One of my training buddies, she was a character, Dawny Fraser, who you mentioned.
Oh, I know that name.
Yeah.
She was at my swimming club. Yeah, I idolized her as a kid.
She was from Balmain in Sydney, and then she moved to Adelaide. You were in Melbourne?
Well, she was down at Melbourne at the Olympic Swimming Club just outside the city when I was there to swim, and she was there, and I got to meet Dawn Fraser.
Yeah, she was.
So let's get. When do you recall him being involved? Was it down in Australia?
It was in 61 or 62 when I met him.
I met him in 62 in Melbourne, and he came to our mission. That's how I met him.
Yeah.
And then I knew it. Then he went and did the St. Hill Special Briefing course. And I saw him again after that. And then I saw him at St. Hill. And then later he came to the Royal Scotsman for training.
Yeah, for the OT3.
For like Class 8 or what? Class 8 or?
Well, he would be among the original OT3s, Class 8, stuff like that.
Yeah, in Valencia.
He's making a lot of money running his missions. And the instant that the latest and greatest rundown was released, he was the first in there.
So when did he start opening missions in the United States? Like, when did he come to the U.S. and start opening missions there?
I can actually look in my records. I got a photo of him on the Queen Mary, I think it was. Yeah. It was in probably 62, because he did the briefing course and then came to the States and bought somebody else's mission and performed his sales magic, because he was very persuasive.
Right.
I mean, he had phenomenal, as we say in the church, TR40, turn 40. Right. He could impinge on you and you knew that you'd been communicated to. So that was that. So he came to the States, bought somebody's mission, boomed that, and then started buying up other missions that weren't doing as well.
Right.
Where was his home base in the U.S.? Where was his home base? What was the mission?
Well, in the U.S. it was Dallas.
Dallas,
yeah,
Texas.
he was in Dallas,
Texas. Got it.
But I know he had the Columbus, Ohio mission, because that's where my husband got into Scientology, and it was an Alan Walters mission.
Yeah. And so on and so forth. And what then happened, he was actually, as we would say in the church, quite OT. He actually had tremendous spiritual perception. And what he did was he was able, I found out this later after I reconnected with him in 1994, after I got out and found that he was doing his gig down there. I thought, fucking brilliant, let's get the show on the road. And so what had happened is he had all this phenomenal perception, past time, past universe type perception, plus future imagery perception of what the key was to the Dallas area and what became the ranch. He actually saw the holograms, the spiritual created holograms from long ago of the vision of the ranch.
The ranch was
what ranch?
where he set up. That's what he set up later on in life.
Later on, in 97 from memory, he moved up there in 97. I got involved with him again in 94 in Dallas.
Right.
Or just north of Dallas. And
we jumped way ahead here. So Dallas was his home base, and then he brought up all these other missions, right? And then he was one of the big mission holders along.
When I reconnected with him in 94, it was in Dallas. He came into America sometime before that, obviously.
Okay.
Because he owned 10 missions by the time he got booted out.
Yeah, he would have lost all his missions in early 80 with the whole mission holder takeover.
Exactly.
He would have,
Janice,
he would have lost
do you know what
everything.
happened to him? Do you know what happened to him then?
I can tell you what happened. What happened, and in fact, you've interviewed the woman who helped him handle getting out. What's the Hawaiian girl?
Candy Swanson.
Candy Swanson, yeah.
She was on the flag as a communications officer, handling all the communications traffic at flag. Well, Alan was there. Well, Alan and she had a fling together, and this is from confirmed by her and info that was on ex-Scientology member board, written by Alan. And what had happened was Candy got wind of the fact that Hubbard was sabotaging Alan. He'd actually passed on instructions. I see you know this.
To the Guardian's office to
Charlie Parcells.
Blackmail him.
Yeah, it's passed on to Charlie Parcells, who was legal, in charge of legal GEO.
Right.
To report to the IRS, the American IRS, that Alan was avoiding U.S. taxes because Hubbard wanted to take over Alan's 10 missions. Now, this was a sabotage, and it was actually criminal activity on the part of Hubbard. So as it happened, Alan was tipped off by his girlfriend, who was on flag at the time. And and it was all written up on the ex-Scientology member board to declare the truth of what a criminal Hubbard was. Right. And so what happened next was the IRS got hold of Alan, and Alan presumably, fortunately, had clean hands, but was able to handle it all. So his gig was, oh shit. And he reported to the GEO, didn't let them know that he knew their hand in the sabotage. And he told the GEO, the IRS are attacking me in order to get at the church. We need to protect you guys and the GEO and the church. Which then, of course, them to have to defend Alan.
Right.
So he became for the church, against the IRS and so on and so forth. And that saved his neck. because then Hubbard had to sort of begin to, protect Alan.
Right.
So that's the bad sin.
Right. And then Alan, yeah, his missions were huge. They were big. They were buzzing. Lots of people coming in.
Yeah.
He really did a number building them up, and he was very well respected as a mission holder.
Yeah. Of course, being 6'2" and fit, all muscle, because those Australian rules football players, they used to beat up on each other. And also, Alan did a stint as a professional boxer in Australia.
Did you find his name listed anywhere?
No, I never went bloody looking for it. But he told me about it, and I said, "Yeah, okay. Roger's gold medal. I'm real."
Right.
But no, he's quite a character, and that's when we first met. Now he thinks it was 61. I know for a fact that it wasn't, because it was after the release of the service fact material. Because when we connected up in Melbourne for the first time, he was telling me, what he was doing in order, because he did the briefing course a couple of times. And the second time he came through Perth and was telling me how he ran CCHs on everybody to get his hands on. And my question was, so why did you run CCHs on them rather than the later Surfact tech? That's why I remember the exact date. I was 63. And he said, because CCHs work. And I thought, that's fucking good. Very clever. Quite right. And that's when he earned my respect.
Well, let me get, I want to bring this back for our viewers in terms of what we're talking about with this guy, Alan Walters. He got in Scientology, whatever. He did the briefing course with Hubbard. He ended up on the ship and he did his Class 8 training. He then started a mission in Dallas, and then he opened up lots of missions, bought them, took them over, whatever. And
he never started anything. He bought
them. Yeah.
He bought an existing,
and then they expanded
it correctly, right, and made it boom. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then he had all these 10 missions or so, or whatever. He was like 10, the biggest mission holder, along with like the Cosmod, which was Martin Samuels, and a couple other people that had lots of missions. And then he had a falling out with Scientology and the church. They came after him, right? Is that right?
Well,
and then he left, right? Am I right?
No bloody way.
Okay.
No reason to come after him. He was the biggest, most prolific, probably only excelled by me. I had more people into online in the church than anybody when I was in London. But right. Alan in America, see, he used to send people to London on their way to St. Hill. So he actually became a FSM to London at one stage. But basically, he was the most prolific FSM sender of people to upper levels, OT levels, and briefing course in America. Also in St. Hill. We had ASHO going at that time. So he was actually worldwide probably the #1 FSM to the advanced orgs.
Okay.
Now, yeah. Hubbard had to be insane by his own technology to attack him and want to knock him out.
Right, because he was feeding basically tons of people into Scientology and up to the upper
making Scientology profitable, for Christ's sake.
Right.
I mean, he was.
I recall because this is the late 70s. Janis, go ahead.
What do you recall?
That dog knows when to bark.
Yeah, he knows Mark's about to talk. So let me
No,
stop
I'm back.
talking.
I'm back. No, what I was going to say is what I recall, because I was on management lines, is that organizations and management, they had problems with missions that were super successful, particularly organizations, because people preferred to be in the missions because they were treated well there.
Yeah.
Right? They were treated like real people, and they wanted to do their training and get their processing at the mission and not want to go to the orgs, because then the orgs would mistreat them. So there was constantly this push-pull of missions. They were at each other as opposed to being on the same team, right?
And that went on forever, because that even happened with my mother and her mission. She would send people on to the Hazy in Melbourne, and the people would not want to be at the Hazy. They'd want to go back to our franchise, our little mission in our home, and do their services there, because it was friendlier and we didn't have step pushers and that type of thing. And even with the bigger missions, where Alan would get in trouble is his places were making more money than the org, so Alan would offer bigger bucks to the Class 8, Class 6 auditors.
To come work for
him. So his mission became, his missions would become bigger than the org that they were feeding to, and have the higher trained auditors and class and case supervisors. So they were actually because they were actually better than the org, right?
Yeah, the fact is,
and the orgs play peanuts to their staff, if that. So they couldn't hire quality people, whereas the missions were making money and they could hire and pay a decent wage. I mean, it was completely a dog's breakfast, the whole thing.
Yeah. Plus the fact, if you're on org staff or Hazy staff, you were whipped constantly, given pain, unless you were absolutely fucking towing line, being perfect and saying, yes, fucking sir, yes, sir.
But also the orgs had to post an L. Ron Hubbard communicator, a flag banking officer. They had to post all these different posts that really did nothing but monitor and supervise and crack a whip on everybody. And everybody was maybe one or two staff members doing all the work. Where in the missions, they didn't have to have an LRH communicator or a flag banking officer or a flag rep. So Alan could just put his staff anywhere where he needed them to get the most production.
Yeah. Quite right.
So Hubbard couldn't have that. After a while, management complained. Everybody complained. Oh, they're ripping off our orgs. They're doing this. I mean, it's all the third party, crap being sent up. And then Hubbard's like, we can't have that. What is Alan Walters doing? Right?
Maybe, but it's also likely that he was being fed false data, false reports.
Oh, I'm sure. That's what I'm saying. In other words, it just became, whatever. It was a wrong target. It was a wrong target to go after Alan Walters and his missions. They should have encouraged it,
Yeah. Right. As I said earlier, the organizational situation that has these went insane, and time to bloody bail out, mate. There's no way that it was going to work the way it was structured, because the tragedy was the actual income earning professional practitioners of the technology was subjugated to and abused by these nothing burgers, HCO, who's supposed to, quote, run the management side of the org. And they're a bunch of incompetents. They'd never been Scientology tech trained. They did not know what, I mean, it was like a zoo trying to deal with these people.
Right.
They could not even communicate correctly, straight, truthfully, honestly. All they wanted to do was dominate and control.
Right.
Right.
And it's quite amazing to watch these imbecilic misfits put into positions of control.
Right.
So
now, Janis. So was Alan Walters? Did he leave? Was he at the Mission Holder Conference in the early '80s, or had he already left?
In '82,
or did he leave then?
In '82, I was not there, because I was doing other things, dealing with other aggravation, is the polite way to put it. But from what I got, when Miscavige started to cause problems for everybody, Alan and the missions were being hit for effectively making money and being successful.
Right.
Finance police, yeah.
Like, Miscavige couldn't have anybody else being more successful than him. And man. So anyway, Alan just called all the mission holders together to look at the tech and get standard correct tech correctly applied per policy, and what policy options did they have in order to protect the tech and their operations. So it's a correct, logical thing to do, right? He wasn't waging war on anybody. Let's have a meeting and let's get the facts together. What have we observed? What have we experienced? What the hell's going on? And what is that we can do to correct it?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, that's when the big shit hit the fan. And that's when.
Well, then did he close his missions, or did he take everybody and say, "Hey,
No,
we're leaving
no,
Scientology," or what happened?
I don't have the nitty-gritty on that. My assumption is that, like all of those mission holders, the finance police moved in. I'm getting this secondhand now.
No, we know that from our end. Yeah, we know
And
that happened.
declared everybody.
Yeah.
Took over, literally declared them enemy, violated all of the policy, doctrines, and contracts that everybody.
Right, the agreements. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And
Well,
they
we're talking
took,
legal contracts violation.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the church should have had its ass sued off for violation of commercial contract.
You're right.
right. They also were taking the money that the missions had in their bank accounts. They were fining them and taking that money as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know later on, and Roger, correct me if I'm wrong, but later on, Alan started up doing his own research. He took where he felt LRH didn't fully have it right. He started doing his own research and formed his own kind of practice of Scientology basic stuff. But then he went further with that. Is that right, Roger?
That I don't know. Alan and I, after I got booted out for the whatever 10th time, I was not in touch with anyone because I got it declared again.
Right.
See, so my attitude was I don't want to get anybody else in trouble. I mean, some of my dearest friends were put. So let me tell you, when you're on knots or solo knots, it costs $10,000 per intensive of sec checking.
Right.
That's
You
12
knew
and a
that?
half hours. Right.
Huh?
Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
Well, it's 12 and a half
$10,000.
hours. An intensive
And you
is
get
12
ordered to
$10,000.
you get ordered, to that under threat of being declared if you don't do it.
Right.
So, by the time I'd gone through 3 or 4 of them, I said, "This is fucking stupid, mate. You better step aside and not let them siphon off any of your retirement funds."
Right. Well, you know what's interesting about you bring up the sec checking during knots. Well, I remember OT3 used to be considered non-interference zone, and that meant that's all you audited on. You were not to be sec checked or anything else because you were in the non-interference zone. And knots, OT 6 and 7, 5, 6, and 7 is addressing the same type of thing as OT3.
Yeah.
So to me, that would also be non-interference zone. So
So
these
they
every
completed
6 month, all these 6 month checkups that DM came up with is all in violation of Scientology's tech on how to deal with OTs, because you're not supposed to be sec checking them, though they're bringing them in every 6 months as a moneymaker.
Yeah. At
Well,
$10,000.
and you know how they got around that. You know how they got around that. When you're being security checked, the first thing you're told is, "I'm not auditing you."
Yeah.
Which
But
is a bunch of BS.
Yeah,
No, I know,
that doesn't matter.
It's the same thing. It just means that they can then they officially can then take whatever you tell them and use it against you, because they're not auditing you.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my knowledge on Alan.
Okay.
Be a good friend.
I thought you did research with him after he left Scientology.
We did. Yeah. We exchanged lots of research. In fact, I think I mentioned it in one of my earlier little paddles. We used to exchange notes, and I'd write him an email on what I've observed is, I don't deal with I thinks. All of my shit is I observe. Quite different.
Right.
I don't have opinions about my statements are I saw or I observed. And my analysis of it is. So as it happened, I could actually, it'd be a bit hard to pull it up on time now, but I got an email exchange between us. And basically what it was, I sent him a research note, and he said, thanks, this will help. He said, and then he gave me information on what he'd been working on, which was a delineation of what are all of our spiritual abilities, capacities, and powers. Pretty important technology, what? You know, knowing, I mean, basically, in Scientology, they never actually stress the importance of knowing who and what you are. Not all where you are. I mean, it tells you that you're a Thetan. All right, well, exactly, you know, what is that? Well, Alan actually articulated the, whatever it was, 30-odd spiritual capacities, abilities, and powers of we spiritual beings. And he missed one. And I wrote back to him by return email. I said, you missed an important one, Alan, and that is, as spiritual presences, we have infinite potential. I said, the word potential is a big word.
Yeah.
The stem word is potent. And so I got into discussing the definition of the term and what it really meant. And so basically, we have infinite potential, being potent, to express, create, know, love, manifest, whatever. Choose a word, see? Choose any of the ability words. So we can express with our infinite potential whatever we want. We can create whatever we want. Now, we get to demonstrating this. This isn't like theory, because if you look at the, as I've done, and I've written all this up, it's going to be my upcoming book. Basically, what we have is a scenario where, as spiritual, infinite spiritual presences, which is our true condition, we have the infinite potential to manifest whatever we envision. And the first thing we did that aberrated us and screwed us up was that we got really uptight about, and this was Alan's original discovery. It wasn't mine. I mean, I think I mentioned earlier on in 77, I discovered that there were earlier universes. you remember that? I was doing OT3.
Okay.
And OT3, one of the processing actions is to date locate the incident that
Oh, yeah, you talked about that before, yeah.
that your spiritual connection is stuck in. Well, I was going along with Hubbard's standard tech at the time of a body thetan.
Right.
Well, it wouldn't wouldn't don't locate.
Right.
Bad indicators and so on and so forth. So I got smart and said, is this an earlier universe? Well, the meter nearly fell off the table. So that's when I discovered 77 earlier universes. Of course, I continued processing from that point on. Same session, but aligned the tech differently. I wrote to Hubbard on that specific point, and the tech then got altered so that we introduced the notion of earlier universes in the advanced levels correction list. If you're having trouble with the body thetan and you can't locate it, check if it's an earlier universe. So that was me and Hubbard. But basically, by the time I connect that with Alan, he was into looking at the earlier universes rather more definitively than I had. For me, I spent another 12 bloody years dealing with spiritual connections and cleaning up all of the spiritual connections that were impeding me wherever they existed. Physical universe, earlier universe, we're talking about in the spiritual universes. I can tell you that's a phenomenal way to recover your spiritual truths and abilities and gains. And all of my research team, I've got about now 50 active guys on my Ascensionism link up. So you can actually not get stuck with being a body as Hubbard did. You know that Hubbard in his later years actually wanted somebody to create an e-meter that would shock.
Yeah, we know that. Yeah.
The spiritual team, not the spiritual, the body thetans he had.
Yeah.
Right.
Talk about bloody insane. Treat them as friends and help them get on with a better existence.
Let me ask you a question, Roger. You obviously, we talked about this before. After you left Scientology, you continue, and you just talked about it now, your own research, right?
Yeah.
Did you do that like Hubbard solo audited for his research or whatever? Is that what you did too in order to look into these different things? Or how did you use an e-meter? Well, how did you do your research?
Alan made a very prescient and brilliant statement. Alan Walter, all of life is a process. So what's the definition of a process? It is the carrying out of a sequence of actions which produce a result. That's pretty simple.
Yeah, very simple.
Pretty basic and pretty truthful. So I carry out a sequence of actions and get a result and observe the bloody result. That's a bright idea. Let me tell you the PhD types that I wrestle with daily, because I'm a member of a number of scientific forums. I was a member of the American Association for the Advancement of Science for 20 bloody years. Christ, those guys are thick. But so the trick is do something and observe the outcome. That's a good way to research. So we find out, who and what are you? We're spiritual beings or spiritual presences. What are your abilities and capacities? Itemize them, practice them, and validate them, and now have a look at where you're at and what you're at. I got all my team doing this all the time, and we're exchanging notes all the time. And this has been going on with I started off, was called Knowledgism, but the person, Knowledgism Practice Group, but the person who inherited Alan's copyrights pulled a Hubbard on us. So I said, screw it, and I transferred the name to Ascensionism. And they're too toxic to be involved in. In fact,
so Alan was doing his own research too, right?
Sure.
You were doing yours, and you guys would compare notes from time to time, but he was doing his own spiritual research. And
out of the church, what happened? When he came out of the church, whatever year it was, 80 something or other, he went off and literally recreated his life. I mean, that's a hell of an accomplishment. And so he developed a series of connections and began to apply his view of workable tech, which was actually quite remarkable and very workable, very accurate, and very productive. And I did a similar course myself. And when I reconnected with him in 94, whatever month it was in 94, I thought, Christ, thank God we got the tech is saved, because I really felt we had it protected and saved and available to others, because that was my gig. You know, I was into training athletes. And so that was it.
Let me ask you this. Did you use the e-meter still to this day?
Huh?
Do you use the e-meter still to this day?
Yeah, the email, we actually had our own created.
But it's a similar type of, you have a device to help.
Yeah, it actually helps you.
Let me ask you another question though. So Alan and you both continue doing this, right? And,
Sure.
and not even, I'm not going to ask a question, but just for our viewers and anybody who's Scientologist, in Scientology, Hubbard would have called you guys all squirrels because you're not following what I say, right? Which is kind of ridiculous. Which is, you're welcome to do your own
well,
stuff,
if you're an honest scientist, you welcome others' input.
That's what happens all the time in medical research and other research. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like people are doing their independent research and then they compare notes and then they step forward. Yeah.
Give me what you discover. Let's check it out. But Hubbard, you see.
Hubbard was my way or the highway. That's it. I'm the only one.
Well, I think I summed him up on my number one video with you guys. What was it? You got a good memory there, Gillham. Janis, what did I call him?
I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look.
It was a lot of words. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, no, he was quite insane, actually. He ended up insane. And, but the truth is, all you need to do is honestly find out who and what you are. Most people don't bloody have any idea, don't know.
Yeah, that's very basic.
Yeah. Now, when you know that, then you can progress further. So how can I win in life? What can I do? What are my powers and abilities? What do I want to do? Which is a key item. And my group, my Knowledgism, my Ascensionism group, they've got all that taped. They know who and what they are, where they are, which is equally important, because a lot of people don't know where the hell they bloody are.
Yeah, well, those are very basic Scientology ethics conditions. The enemy formula, find out who you are.
Confusion is find out where you are.
Yeah,
that's right.
And in time, where in physically, what date?
Right. What day?
People
Yeah.
stuck
Come to
all over the
present
bloody
time.
place.
Roger, let me ask you this: what's your ultimate goal with this research? What are you trying to achieve?
Well, I'm actually looking forward to dying again.
Oh, okay.
So,
You're
well, do you
looking
believe
for-
that? Do you believe obviously in reincarnation? Are you hopeful that when you come back the next lifetime that you will remember everything that happened? And
Well, I know I will.
Okay.
It's no longer a belief. No, I've fucking done it, mate. When I died in 1963, and then look for my next, you see, let me tell you a true story. I got a bunch of people. Most of them are ex-Scientologists.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been through all that drama. And one of them, who's now dead, who was my computer techie, I did it's all on the internet and not put up by me, put up by somebody else. I did a presentation. I was invited to address ex-Scientology, whatever they bloody call themselves at the time. So I said, sure, because, I'd earned a bit of a reputation from what I'd posted on the ex-Scientology member board. So I got called in to address the Scientology Free Zone. So I talked about what I was doing, what Alan had developed, and yip, for about a half an hour. And it got posted on YouTube. And then suddenly I get an email out of the blue from a guy a sweetheart of a guy who was gay, actually really had been stuck as a homosexual, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he explained that he'd been on lines in the field trying to get processing and handling. And the guy that took his money and was going to process him declared him an illegal pre-clear and dumped him. So my mate Paul, his name is Paul, emailed me, said, would you accept me as a client? My instant answer was, I'll accept anybody who asks for help. Okay?
Good
And
answer.
that's my position. And he wept. He came to New York and I started processing. Now, there's a bit of a story behind this. My brother was also gay. He actually ran the AIDS wards in the big hospital in Sydney. He was 8 years younger than me. And so, when he told me he was gay and when I was on staff in London, I said, it's okay by me, mate. You're into boys. I'm into girls. Life's still sweet,
Right.
Who cares? I'm not into making other people bloody wrong. So anyway, Paul arrived and I processed him and he became the tech guru who set up our forum website and so on and so forth. So he ended up developing bladder cancer, and it became terminal. And he Zoomed me. We have always had a weekly chat on Zoom, if not a session. And he said, Roger said, and this is after I told my team about dying in 1963, taking on a body that turned out to be female, and says, that's not for me. Because you do have that kind of awareness and choice. If you know you have it. If you don't know you've got the awareness and the choice, of course you don't bloody have it. It's honestly that simple. So he said to me, how can you get what you want for your next life after you've died? And my answer was, dummy, you decide.
Simple.
That young lady you got there, Mark, is clever. She's sharp. You're right. You bloody decide. How else would you? And the act of decision actually creates it. That's the trick.
Right.
I want, it manifests if you're powerful enough and if you're, in charge of your life, spiritual life force. So we beings have phenomenal spiritual life force capacity, potential, and powers. When you know that, you can execute, you can implement. So what we had learned, I won't get into the personal details here for him. He actually was in communication with one of my other research buddies and spouse who were having a child, and he got in agreement with them to pick up that child's body. Well, this is very recent, so it's too early to check with the child. But when I was having my spinal operation, I had my spinal operation in 2020 in November, the day before the bloody election. So I'm recovering in hospital, laying on my back in pain, and suddenly there's this manifestation of a spiritual presence at the foot of the bed, on the right-hand side of the foot of the bed, and it gets my attention, and I go, Paul? It's my mate, Paul, the fairy. He died literally, probably while I still had on the operating table, because he was at the foot of the bed when I was recovering, same day after the operation.
Right.
And so we actually have that capacity. So he had the ability to literally reach out to me and communicate to me that I'm exited, I'm free of the body now. So my attitude is, I got no worries about either dying or what next. I'm rather interested to be free from the encumbrance of the physical universe. So why is the physical universe an encumbrance? That seems to perplex you there, my dear.
No, I'm waiting for your answer.
You're doing deep thought on that. Well, the fact is, it's a solution to a problem. And it's on automatic. And we know from Surfactor, any solution to a problem that's on automatic is in the bloody way all the time.
Right.
Because it revivifies, goes on to automatic replication. And so I'd like for it to be the other way. Well, I'm almost there, because that's
Okay.
the thing I'm working on, getting free of my involuntary replications, like continuing to default into the physical universe.
Then where do you go?
Yeah, so the trick then will be manage expressions of what other people are using as the physical universe, because I don't want to be necessarily encumbered by their versions of it.
Right.
See?
You want your own.
Yeah, that's right. That's the trick that I'm working on. So that's the research that me and my team are carrying out. And I'm not vain enough to think that I'm the only one who's got right answers. I'm interested in, like, what do you see?
Right. You got to put it all together.
Yeah, what's your perception on it? We actually went into an advancement on the tech, which is terribly important. And I think that all the ex-Scientologists will be grateful to know that there is a future for them. Because that's terribly important. There is a little anecdote I'll tell you. You know who Wally Burgess is?
Yes.
I knew Wally well.
Yeah, I knew him well. He was a pre-clear of mine in Melbourne.
Melbourne.
Yeah, Melbourne stuff. And what happened is he's 2D, Scientology for lover, was Jessie. I forgot Jessie's last name. She was a sweet soul. When I had a couple of $100, I ended up getting 200 straight hours of CCHs, or CCH1 actually. And it was Jessie that delivered the 200 straight hours of CCH1. So when I was at Flag, and Wally was there as LRH
Host.
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 He told Jessie, "Hey, Jess, Roger Boswarva's here at Flag." Her immediate response was, "Tell him to take his bloody hand back."
Give me that hand. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's we old time.
It's a command. That's a command, so people know in the CC.
We can have a joke about all that nonsense.
Like, give me a hand. Go. Roger, you got a story you want to tell us about one of the earlier videos. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's John Raffanello. He was actually one of the original Class 8s at St. Hill. No, actually Class 6. I think he did Class 8 on board the ship later. But
Right,
Raffa was the scientist, a chubby guy, and he was a graduate of California Institute of Technology. And the point was, it's blown from my memory with our argument, Mark. He actually was quite an entertaining character. He used to do lots of lectures around LA and the orgs, and he was brilliant at getting new people into the church, which of course made him a target of those who wanted to kill off anybody else who was successful or important.
Right.
So, which is not uncommon in the church, unfortunately. So HCO accused him of not being on lines and stealing pre-clears and yep. And I knew him in California, in Los Angeles. I visited him out there. And all he ever wanted to do was entertain people and put them on lines. So that's the answer to Raffanello. He was not a bad guy. He was a good guy who was sabotaged by the idiot classes in the church.
Right.
That answers the question of the person who wrote that in response to the first video.
Good.
Good. All right. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We really appreciate it. Also, hit that like button. And like Janis likes to say, rock slam that like button. And if you have any questions or comments about what we've talked about here, go down below. We read them all, and Janis and I respond to them. So we really appreciate that. And if you'd like to support our channel, you can buy us a coffee. There's a link down below in the description. And any support is greatly appreciated. And then finally, if you want to buy any of our connection merchandise, there's a tag where you can just right below here, you can order it and it'll be sent out to you. So just want to remind everybody that that is available to you as well. Does anybody have anything else they want to say before we end off here?
Other than good day.
Thanks,
Good day, Roger.
Thanks. And stick around till after we end the video because we'll talk on the backside, okay? Anyway,
always a pleasure, Roger.
Yeah.
And you too.
Okay, next time.
Janis. I've got to keep remembering your name. It's Janis, isn't it?
That's right.
I tell you, don't get all this.
Hold on. And get her to pronounce your name again. What is it, Janis?
Boswarva.
Yeah.
Boswarva. Okay, goodbye, everybody. We'll see you later.
Bye.